Far Cry 6 on Google Stadia runs at 30 frames per second. Or does it? That's the topic at hand today, and it's coming via GInfinityEsports.com. In a recent interview with Ubisoft's Benjamin Hall, who's world director on Far Cry 6, it was revealed that the Stadia version of the game would be running at 30 FPS alongside last-gen consoles. The statement given was the following: "Throughout development, our objective has been to make the most out of the new generation of consoles, while ensuring it wouldn't be at the expense of other platforms or previous-gen hardware. The team have put a tremendous amount of effort to ensure each platform has the best possible experience we can deliver, with next-gen consoles achieving 60 FPS at 4K and 30 FPS on Stadia and older consoles." As expected, this statement caused a bit of a stir within the Stadia community, both on Reddit and over on Twitter. The whole idea of a 60 FPS gameplay experience has been quite a trending topic within the community as of late, and rightfully so. While the whole frame rate discussion has typically always been more of a PC thing, it is starting to become more of a standard practice, especially with the new consoles. And I do think that's partially why this discussion is being brought up more and more as time goes on. You'd be hard-struck to find a current-gen game that doesn't offer both a frame rate or resolution mode. It's even an option we're starting to see on some Stadia games, the most recent example being the port of Darksiders 3. But let's take it back just a step and get back on track. This is about Far Cry 6, and obviously some people are disappointed by this news, myself included. But I do think it'd be a good idea for most people to take a step back here and wait for more information. The statement itself does read pretty definitively on an initial read-through, but there is still room for interpretation based on what was said, with the next-gen consoles achieving 60 FPS at 4K and 30 FPS on Stadia. The statement itself doesn't really clarify what resolution that Stadia is running on. Most people are assuming it's 4K 30 due to the previous mention of 4K on next-gen consoles, but for better or worse, we're not actually aware of the resolution the game is currently running. But for the discussion at hand, let's just assume it's running at 4K or a resolution close to 4K and is just being upscaled to that image quality. Well, maybe there would still be room for a 60 FPS mode. And while that may sound like me just being hopeful, I do have a reason for saying this. News dropped shortly after this, by coincidence or not, that Assassin's Creed Valhalla will be getting a patch on Stadia that introduces a 60 frames per second mode. And this news, at the very least, has me somewhat hopeful that Far Cry 6 will follow suit. After all, AC Valhalla isn't that old of a game, and it had the same experience with next-gen consoles being able to run it at 60 FPS and last-gen consoles and Stadia being stuck at 30. A very similar story to what we're currently hearing with Far Cry 6. So maybe Ubisoft has taken notice and is going to be adding that sort of thing going forward. Or maybe take it a step further and, better yet, start introducing 60 FPS options on all their previous titles that only have 30 FPS. The fact that AC Valhalla is capable of doing it and they're adding it into the game means that pretty much all their older Far Cry games, as well as The Crew 2, should be more than capable of having a 60 FPS mode as well. I could understand if Far Cry 6 is pushing the envelope in terms of graphic fidelity and using new technologies that are really pushing the limits of hardware. After all, even on next-gen consoles, it was confirmed that ray tracing isn't a feature there because it wouldn't be possible to do at 60 frames per second. But I think it says a lot that they noted the importance of that frame rate target for next gen. I feel like they could have gone the other route of including ray tracing while limiting the frame rate to 30, but decided to keep it at 60 for good reasons. Personally speaking, don't get me wrong, I love ray tracing, I think it looks fantastic, but I'd rather have a stable 60 than include that feature if it's gonna drag it down to 30. Likewise for Stadia or any other cloud gaming platform, I'm a huge advocate for 60 FPS simply because it does make a difference when streaming a game. For those unaware, having a higher frame rate on the server side will lead to lower latency, and lower latency will lead to a more one-to-one experience as if you were playing locally. This difference may not be noticeable to everyone, but to some it is, myself included. And I know some people in this community really feel strongly about this subject. I've had many people come to me and say, why should I care about this now if I've been used to playing 30 FPS this entire time? It didn't stop great games from being great games. And you know what? You're right. You can totally have a great time playing a game at 30 FPS. But we're moving to a different age in gaming where 60 FPS and higher than that isn't being limited to the PC space. It's become a huge talking point for the current gen PS5 and Xbox Series X. Developers behind games like Far Cry 6 have even stated that they're prioritizing targeting that frame rate for a reason. And as more and more people get to experience and expect that sort of gameplay, it's going to become more of a glaring omission when it's not there on Stadia. That's why I will continue to always advocate that every developer should be trying to target having a 60 FPS mode on Stadia, even if you have to cut down the resolution. Give players the choice of playing the way that they want to play. It's not a hard concept to understand, and that way nobody has to lose out on what they prefer out of their gameplay experience. Not to mention, it makes Stadia look a lot better as an attractive option when choosing where to play a game. Wanting 60 FPS on Stadia isn't a slight toward the platform, and I do feel that many within the community are starting to see it that way. The fact remains is that there are a lot of games on Stadia that could probably push 60 FPS at 1080p but don't, and that has more to do with the developers not implementing that sort of feature built into their game. And if people want to see that become more of a standard thing, raising your voice and talking about it is the best thing we can do as players who are buying these games. But that's my piece on it, and I've said everything I need to say. You let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful at all, be sure to hit that like button as it really does help the channel out, and if you're wanting more content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. As always, thank you for watching the video. This has been the Virtual Cloud, giving you the latest and greatest on everything cloud gaming and VR related, and until next time, I'll catch you in the clouds.